After a brutal loss, Brock Purdy once again was labeled a game manager. To most, he would never be a game changer, but after this game, the one thing you had to call him was history maker. One of the things I wanted to focus on for this season was how the media was shaping the narratives around what Brock Purdy was doing, and after the game against the Ravens, I shut the media out completely because I didn't need the negativity. Knowing what happened in the game was enough. But after the game, I realized that I had to move on and get ready for the next game, much like the Niners did. Despite the loss, they were in the playoffs, and while they weren't the concrete number 1 seed, by the end of week 17, they would know for sure. For Purdy though, the loss against the Ravens crushed any hope of him being named MVP, which, if I'm being honest, I could probably do an entire episode on that whole fiasco, but what I was most interested in was to see if and how Purdy could pick himself up and move on from the loss. Little did I know that by the end of the game against the Commanders, Brock Purdy would not only bounce back from the loss against the Ravens, he would make history in ways that I don't think anyone thought was possible. Let's start with something that was confined to the Niners organization only. When you think about 49ers quarterbacks, 2 names immediately come to mind: Joe Montana and Steve Young. And while Purdy has a very long way to go before he can say he belongs in the same conversation as them in terms of accomplishments, he can lay claim to the one thing that they can't. With the yards that Purdy threw for in the game against the Commanders, it would bring his total passing yards to 4,280, which would end up being a 49er franchise record. And it was notable for 2 reasons. One was that he was able to do it despite the 4 losses the team had, but the more important reason was that he did it in 16 games. Over the past few episodes, I made the choice to start focusing on certain players in addition to Purdy, but it was for a purpose, because I wanted to shed light on the main narrative that had plagued Purdy since he stepped on the field in week 1. Purdy doesn't make the team better, he doesn't elevate them. In the last episode, I broke down how each of 4 players had accomplished things they hadn't yet done in their careers up to this point because they didn't have the right quarterback throwing them the ball. George Kittle had a career-high 3 touchdowns in a single game and a career-high 11 touchdowns in 2022 that only happened after Purdy started. Deebo Samuel, for the first time since he was drafted, was being used more as a wide receiver, managing to have more receiving touchdowns than rushing touchdowns. Brandon Ayuk became a legitimate deep threat, managing 7 games with 100+ receiving yards, including a career-high 156-yard game. And Christian McCaffrey, for the first time in his career, had 7 receiving touchdowns, which led the league in running backs and allowed him to tie the league-high 21 total touchdowns. But here's what else they did. With Purdy putting up 4,200+ passing yards, the 49ers would become the first team since 2004 to have 4 players reach 1,000+ scrimmage yards. They became the 6th team to do it in NFL history. But there was more to it than first appeared. The other teams to achieve this did so with a combination of a running back and 3 wide receivers. But in the case of the 49ers, they would be the first team in NFL history to accomplish this feat with all 3 skill positions: a running back, 2 wide receivers, and a tight end. In fact, the game ball from week 17 now sits in the Pro Football Hall of Fame after it was signed by all 4 players. Which begs the question, why had this never happened before, given the fact that any quarterback could be dropped into the 49ers and have success? Well, that's easy. Those 4 players are all pros. Except this is where I think people like to play some revisionist history. Christian McCaffrey, there is no question. He was named first team All-Pro in 2019 in 2 different positions and wouldn't be named an All-Pro again until 2023. George Kittle, again, no question. He was named second team All-Pro in 2018, first team All-Pro in 2019, another second team in 2022, and he would be named first team All-Pro again in 2023. Here's where things get a little dicey. Deebo Samuel would be named first team All-Pro in 2021. What I think is very interesting though, at least when it comes to discussions about Purdy, is that so many people will still hang on to that All-Pro despite the fact that, according to Deebo himself, his 2022 production was not great. And while he still played well in 2023, there was a noticeable decline in his production and effort. And then there's Brandon Ayuk. One of the things that I liked most about the 2023 season was watching the connection between Purdy and Ayuk grow as the season progressed. In fact, it was fitting that Purdy's first and last touchdown of the regular season went to Ayuk, and in those 2 touchdowns, touchdowns, you could see the progression of that connection. In the first game against the Steelers, the throw and catch was your standard run-of-the-mill touchdown. But in the last game that Purdy would play in the regular season, his final touchdown proved how well he could navigate the pocket as it was breaking down and how well he could escape and make something out of nothing. It was that play, plus everything else that Ayuk had done during the season with Purdy, that earned him his first All-Pro of his career. And this is what has always frustrated me about this season as a Purdy fan. I've always maintained the stance that Purdy has benefited from the players around him. But to act like the players around him hadn't benefited from his play was disrespectful to what Purdy was putting on tape each and every game, even the bad ones. In my opinion, after the regular season was over, Purdy had, through his stats and his gameplay, answered every single question that had ever been asked to him up until this point. Except for one.
Are you confident that if the Niners, by some chance, are trailing in the second half of a playoff game, that Purdy won't melt down?
And that's going to do it for this video. If you like this content, drop a like and leave a comment. To stay up to date, click that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see ya in the next one.